All right, now that we're recording, we'll go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Hannah Crapo, and I'm the Content Marketing Manager here at Certiport. We're happy to have everyone joining us for our webinar today. Feel free to drop into the chat, which I've opened up. Let us know where you're joining us from, what courses you teach, if you work in a training center, or if you work in a school setting. We're excited to be able to all collaborate and kind of get to know each other a little bit better as we discuss our topic. Now, as I mentioned, our session is being recorded, so everyone who is registered will receive a link to the full recording after we've wrapped this afternoon. So if you have to drop a little bit early or if you have a conflict, we'll make sure to send that out to you so that you can catch all of the content. That does, however, mean that our attendees are currently on mute, so we would encourage you to interact via the chat or the Q&A feature if you have any questions that you want to address to our panelists today. Now, before we dive into our panel discussion, I did just want to, let's get this situated to our next slide here, to call out a couple of our session sponsors. The first is the Information Technology Specialist Program. The ITS program is a way for individuals to validate foundational IT skills sought after by employers. With IT specialist certifications, candidates certify their knowledge in a broad range of IT topics, including software development, database administration, networking and security, mobility, and device management, and of course, AI, which we're going to be discussing today. The second sponsor is the Microsoft Certified Fundamentals Certification Program. This program is for students who are exploring a career in artificial intelligence, data science, and cloud computing. With this program, you can help your students get on the pathway to a prosperous career by administering Microsoft Certified Fundamentals exams in your classroom or testing center. Now, today we're going to be talking about foundational concepts for artificial intelligence, and we'll be learning from two incredible panelists. Our first panelist is Jeff Felice. As president of CertNexus, Jeff is responsible for advancing the company's mission of closing the emerging technology skills gap. With 25 years of experience within the training and certification industry, serving in general management and practice leadership roles, Jeff combines his passion for professional performance with technology to bring change within global organizations while improving the opportunities for individuals in emerging tech. When not working towards improving the lives of others, Jeff can be found doing the same for his own as an avid reader and cycling enthusiast. And our second panelist is Joe Bruce. Joe is a customer-focused and data-driven product management leader with a proven track record of successful product launches, fostering innovation and cross-functional collaboration. Driven and strategic with a unique combination of governance, risk, and compliance expertise, product management leadership, and passion for analytics, Joe is responsible for determining Pearson VUE's security and compliance, on-view and analytics reporting product roadmaps. In addition, he leads Artificial Intelligence Governance Committee, which promotes and oversees the responsible use of AI within Pearson VUE. Before joining Pearson VUE, he was a risk assurance director at PwC and held roles of increasing responsibility in compliance, auditing, security, and third-party assurance. So those are some very lengthy and very wonderful introductions into our panelists today. I'm going to go ahead actually and just stop sharing really quickly so that we can see everyone a little bit better. But before we dive into our full discussion, I wanted to give our panelists a chance to introduce themselves. So Jeff, we'll go ahead and start with you. Why don't you tell us about yourself and the work that you do with AI?
Great. Thank you so much, Hannah. So again, my name is Jeff Lees and serve as the president of CertNexus. And my involvement in AI is around helping others learn the knowledge and skills needed to work with AI, whether that's in a business profession, such as in a marketing or sales or operations role, or those who want to go on to become AI or machine learning engineers, data scientists, et cetera. So we provide training and certification to help lead individuals to that and have partnered with Certiport as well to do so.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jeff. Joe, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself as well and tell us how you're connected to AI?
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you again, everybody, for joining today. Excited about today's call. I guess for my role through there, I'm directly connected to artificial intelligence or AI through two avenues. One is help building out our AI portfolio and roadmap. Working with all the different types of cross-functional team members, our customers, and thinking through how we would be able to better harness the capabilities of artificial intelligence, but also on our AI governance committee. So I lead that committee that makes sure that we're implementing and deploying responsible practices and making sure that we are using AI in a responsible manner and is respecting the choices that our clients and candidates make about the privacy of their information, and making sure that we're applying all the ethical standards we need to use artificial intelligence. So pretty much every day, some conversation I'm having is about AI through there. So happy to kind of continue that discussion today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Joan. Thank you both for being here. I wanted to take us back a little bit. AI, although it's at the forefront, I think, of a lot of news these days, it's been around for quite a while. And so there are people who've been working with artificial intelligence for years. Joe, just to get a little bit of background from you, how did you first start working with artificial intelligence?
Yeah, and I guess I think all of us have probably been using artificial intelligence for a while
Mm,
and maybe didn't realize it. You think
mm.
about Siri or Alexa, choose your device of choice from there and had some type of voice enabled assistant along the way. But I guess from a professional standpoint, with my background leading our kind of our test security or fraud teams here at Pearson VUE, we've been using artificial intelligence, machine learning a lot to help us identify where there could be instances of, anomalies in our data. How can we identify potential, candidates gaining an unfair advantage or finding, proctors or test centers that may be having different malpractices or people trying to, harvest content and sell them. So we've been using, machine learning, a subset of artificial intelligence for quite some time now through there. And that's really how I got into it, is more from a fraud detection perspective.
I like that we've talked about kind of a subset of that, and I hope we come back to machine learning a little bit later on because I think that is one of those kind of foundational concepts of AI that's going to be really important for students and professionals to understand. So thank you, Joe, for introducing that to us. Jeff, let's come to you. How did you first start working with AI?
And I think, like as Joe noted, and like many of us, I was an unaware consumer of AI for a number of years, right? So, whether that's through a search or through dynamic pricing or recommendation engines, right? I think many of us have been consumers of artificial intelligence for a number of years. About half a dozen years ago, um, as we started to look at how we enabled others to learn more about AI, we became involved in not only development of curriculum, et cetera, for that, but in doing so, I also recognize if we were going to train individuals that we also, and this speaks to what Joe is responsible for today, is talked about the responsible use of AI. So I became involved with IEEE. They have a global program for educators that help them understand how do you bring teach AI, but do that in a responsible way as well. So I helped serve on that committee and help publish the paper to help educators globally as well. So really, it was from an education standpoint. Then it became really topped off with the responsible use of AI as well.
I'm glad that you've both touched on that. And I think that that's going to be something that this next question really leads into as well, is what impact has AI had within your company? So the responsible use of that technology as well. So Jeff, we'll come to you first.
Yeah, for us, I think one thing that we have to think about is AI is very good at doing tasks, right?
Mm.
So a lot of us, there's some techno stress in the world right now. Is AI going to take over all of our jobs? And the reality is that humans decide what tasks AI is going to perform and whether that comprises a job or not. And we may talk about that later. And the reason why I say that is because what we've done is we've elected to use AI for specific tasks in our organization, things that help better facilitate whether it's customer interactions or rote tasks that can be performed by AI that allow individuals to elevate their own contributions to the organizations through more complex tasks that require critical thinking, et cetera. So we've used it across the organization, from engaging in our chats with organizations. We use it from a technology standpoint, behind the scenes and doing some things that help us dynamically present information based on to provide more personalized experiences for individuals. And then we're also, like many, starting to use generative AI. So think of Chat GPT and similar technologies. But we're starting to use that in a limited way. We're still, I think, like many, trying to figure out where that technology is useful, and also how do we protect our own intellectual property while leveraging some of the capabilities of this newer technology.
Yeah, I think generative AI is really the youngest sibling, right, amongst the AI
Right.
technologies. So being
It
able to
is.
figure out where that fits in with the mix of other AI technologies is really
Yeah.
important. So, Joe, you've touched on a couple of the ways that Pearson View is leveraging AI. Do you have anything else that you want to add to that? What impact has it had within our team?
Yeah, and I would say, yeah, I think Jeff, I think we were all kind of playing off of some of these concepts from there. Is AI has been around for quite some time, and if I think more broadly from Pearson's perspective, we've been utilizing and leveraging AI for decades. If you think through, even from the early '90s when we're looking at automated scoring of essays, how can we go ahead and do that through our K through 12 businesses from there? Our English language learning practice, has an English proficiency based assessment that is AI scored for the audio portion of those particular exams from there. Or some of our different workforce skills actually has been using LLMs before people even knew what an LLM was. 3 years ago, to think about how they can provide recommendations based on assessing skills and occupation demand trends that are out in the market from there today. So, I think I think about how AI has impacted kind of Pearson overall, it's always been kind of one of those foundational building blocks for us. And I think to talk about artificial intelligence, we've touched on some of those topics about, machine learning is about how can you analyze some of the various different types of data. Computer vision, that's another type of AI that's out there that kind of enables computers to kind of derive information, from images, video, type of thing. Natural language processing, giving computers the ability to understand language versus bits and bytes, and or kind of the robotics or robotic process automation, kind of the rote task from there. And I think what's really impacted and has been in everybody's top of mind is generative AI, which is really a combination of all these other different types of aspects that's really producing new output. A lot of the other historical AI was based on data that came in from there. And getting to the point for generative AI, as it suggests, it's generating that new output, whether it's text, audio, code, images, videos that's out there. So I think that's where, as we think about what's impacting, what's that next step in kind of that evolution of artificial intelligence that can help, for us, how can we help individuals learn, and how can we help, instructors teach, and provide them the tools to help make that even more efficient.
So that's such a great lean in, Joan. I wanted to go next. Obviously, a lot of our attendees, at least those I'm seeing in the chat, are educators who are working in the training setting or the teaching setting. And we want to know how AI is being adopted, right, for these students or candidates who are going into these entry-level jobs. So how are you seeing the AI technology that you've mentioned be adopted into these kind of entry-level positions?
For me, how I'm seeing it, it's not only entry level positions, but what's very unique now is I'm seeing it introduced at all levels. And what's really fascinating for me is, kind of seeing those new entry level type of individuals playing with AI is also with executives that are also trying to figure this out from there. So it's kind of a unique dynamic, that I've seen is, it's almost the great equalizer a bit, is everybody's kind of learning how to go through and help that. And we're seeing a lot more of how, how people's experiences outside of work, they see in their retail, their Alexas, their Netflix recommendation, or, all the shows that are coming up through there, how they start thinking about how is that going to help improve their individual roles from there. So I'm seeing a lot of creativity and excitements about, thinking about let's not maintain the status quo, but what is the art of the possible on some of these items from there, and how can we start to leverage this to make that more high fidelity type of experiences from a candidate or kind of your workers or your clients or your customers.
And I think, Jeff, this ties in really well with what you were mentioning with your work with IEEE, right? Is helping educators be able to see how this is being adopted in the workforce. So what's been your experience? What research have you seen about how this is being adopted in the marketplace?
Yeah, and I think Hannah is that AI is going to be another tool in your belt, right? I think what as educators what we need to understand is that much like you want to produce individuals that have good critical thinking skills, some level of emotional intelligence, et cetera, right? There's some hard skills that we're preparing them with as well around technology. And some of those could be associated with networking, programming skills, and AI is going to be one of those skills as well. The thing that I think is unique about AI, it goes beyond the technical professional, right? So if you're going to go into a marketing role, a sales role, supply chain management, right? Whatever, many of your students may not even realize with the opportunity that's available to them and the unique opportunities and job roles, but all of them are likely to use some form of AI going forward and even more so, right? So I think it's their understanding of how AI can be used, and that it's likely to be used. What are acceptable uses of AI as well? Responsible use of AI, and the fact is that this is going to be as they'll learn, right? In all of us is right this concept of K to gray, right? Where we're always learning, right? In the fact that AI is rapidly evolving, and I think generative AI has brought that to the forefront. But as Joe noted, AI has been a technology that's been available for decades, but it continues to advance and advancing at a pace now where we've seen CPUs advance in the past, right? It's almost this doubling factor. And so I think what we have to do is make sure that our students are prepared with the skills for today, but also with the foundation to build skills for tomorrow as well.
So, Jeff, I'm going to come back to you and hopefully build on this idea. What are some of those concepts or those skills that you think people need to be able to succeed with artificial intelligence as they go into the workforce?
Yeah, I think is across the board, regardless of what position you obtain, initially in the workforce, is everyone has to understand the general concepts. What is artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning? If you're going to be involved in projects specifically, the difference between things like supervised learning and unsupervised learning. What are some of the challenges associated with AI? What are some of the opportunities? And how can it be applied for use? And so I think those are things that everyone should understand. If you're going into a role where you're going to become a machine learning engineer, or an AI engineer, or potentially a data scientist. Data science is very closely aligned with AI, and many times uses machine learning and the modeling exercises, et cetera, is that you're going to have to acquire some other skills. Some mathematical skills, at least conceptual understanding of some more advanced techniques. You're going to have to pick up some programming skills. I know we're going to more no code, low code environment or assisted, with generative AI technologies, but still you need to understand the fundamentals of programming and then build on top of that some of the specific skills that you'll learn initially, probably in machine learning, and then as you advance in your career with more deep learning capabilities as well.
So I'm going to ask a follow-up question. I hope that's okay. You've talked
Yeah.
about a lot of different kind of learning opportunities, right? Or different technologies that kind of need to be mastered or at least understood. What are some of the resources then that you would recommend educators turn to maybe introduce some of these subjects to their students?
Yeah, and the IT specialist program, starting with Certiport, I think is a great program to start with. We actually worked with Certiport on that program, and the intent for that was really you could take that student kind of the 11, 12, 13 grades, and you could even go probably deeper down if they're in a STEM program, and have been introduced to technologies, even in grades 9 and 10, maybe middle school even. Um, and that's a really good foundational program. And I would say personally, if I was the grand poobah of education, for all of the United States or globally, I would say everyone should leave high school or the equivalent of high school with that knowledge. That will at least give you an awareness to be able to go out into the world and be able to understand, hey, where I need to learn more, or what opportunities may be available to me in careers. So to me, that's the great starting place. And then from there, there's a number of opportunities with vendor neutral and vendor specific training, and certification opportunities. And obviously, as individuals go into the a potential collegiate career or through the armed forces or whatever it may be, there's a number of opportunities for them to advance their skills there as well.
Perfect, Jeff. Thank you. That was wonderful. Joe, do you have any additional thoughts about AI concepts that you think people need to understand to be successful in the workforce?
Yeah, and I would again absolutely agree with Jeff on there. For we're talking about kind of those foundational technical type of aspects from there. And what I see even for those that are in those technical roles, but I think it's for anybody, even outside those technical roles, as they're working with AI, it's more of the other type of critical thinking type of skills I think are very important from there. And also the professional skepticism. I originally was trained as in accounting. I had an auditor that was like the foundational aspect of, trust but verify type of thing. And as I think about generative AI, I've heard it often referred to as, a BS generator because it comes up with really believable content, as you're dealing with these LLMs. So, having really that professional skepticism, the critical thinking skills to say, like, does this really make sense from there? I know I heard in the news there was a grocery store, I think in Australia, that used an LLM to talk about, come up with unique ideas of stuff that's in their grocery store. And they were recommending like things that were poisonous to people to include in a recipe, so it's that professional skepticism, that critical thinking, skills that need to be mindful is, it's a great starting point, I think, for some of those different aspects. But also I think as you think through, if we got, the bridge into the technical things that Jeff said, another foundational thing is I would say the prompt engineering. That's a lot of things of how do you, building up those skills of how you start to interact with the machines. How do you use kind of some of the prompts to go through and get the information? How do you iterate through multiple different prompts to get through there versus one giant type of data dump or prompt to the LLM? So that's what I see as I think about anyone wanting to kind of get into AI or any type of role from there is thinking about also balancing those technical with more of those softer technical skills too.
Thank you. I'm glad that we got the balance of both of those. And that's something that I've heard from other educators as well, is that as you're working with AI, a lot of companies are turning to people in the liberal arts or with a background in communication, with writing, because if we're working with especially generative AI, it only comes up with something as good as what you've kind of put into it, right? So a lot of it goes into the human element of the use of AI and how are we making it an effectual tool in our tool belt as opposed to just something that we're kind of dumping data into and then hoping something good comes out. Um, and this goes into, I think, really nicely with what we wanted to talk about next is a lot of people are concerned about the impact that AI is going to have on either the field that they want to go into or the field that they're currently in. So what advice, Joe, would you share with them, or what would you say to people who are concerned about jobs being impacted by artificial intelligence?
Yeah, and I would say the one thing I always try to keep in my mind as I think through some of these types of advancements that they come through, the only thing that is constant is change. If you look back through all the different types of, industrial revolutions that we've had, how technology has come through, the invention of steam, the invention of electricity, the assembly line, those were technology advances that did impact the way people are working from that. So, as we think through that, what we think about for people that may be in a role that could be impacted by AI or not is thinking about there are additional new opportunities that come up from there, and it's thinking about how can you help reskill, upskill for some of those potential roles, but also thinking about how that will really impact the day to day. I think in the short term. From there, what I see happening is everybody's roles will be impacted from there, but from the standpoint of it'll help automate certain tasks. Like Jeff said, there may be some rote tasks that are very easy to automate it from there. There may be tasks that help augment someone's particular role because there are talking about the responsible use of AI. There's certain decisions that you want a human to make versus a machine. From there. So they'll help provide recommendations, they'll help gather insights or details about, an action that needs to be taken, but a human needs to make that with the goal of starting to free up more of that time for an individual to spend more on strategic, critical thinking type of activities. Or all the things that people are like, oh, if I only had more time, I could get more on the strategy, or I could make something better or improve it from there. I think that's where I see a lot, and particularly in the short term, how AI could impact jobs. It's more on those automation of tasks, the augmenting of tasks, with the goal of starting to free up people get in that critical thinking airspace from there. But I think with all technology change, there's definitely that hype cycle. You get to that peak of inflated expectations that AI is going to save everything and do everything. Then you hit that trough of disillusionment. You're like, oh, now that I'm getting through it, this is really what it's good at. And then you start to get in the kind of that enlightenment type of phase. Is like, oh, this is really where it's at. So I think as we see kind of the advent the last 18 months, 2 years in the generative AI space, we're definitely starting to get into that. Okay, is it really going to be the end all be all? Probably not, but it's definitely going to be transformational in what things can do for us going forward.
That's wonderful, Joe. Thank you so much for your thoughts on that. Jeff, anything to add?
Yeah, just briefly, Joe pointed out, we've had these, major industrial revolutions, and throughout them, we've always added jobs. In fact, the World Economic Forum has noted that it's likely that there will be displacement of a number of jobs in the millions related to AI, but there'll be many more millions added. And in fact, the net impact will be 10 to 12 million new jobs that it will be a result of AI. So I think as Joe was alluding to is that we need to prepare ourselves so for those jobs that may move towards obsolescence, right? That we're not targeting skills that would put us in those jobs, right? Is developing the skills that allow us to be in job roles that will have AI that augments what we do, much like computers augment what we do, internet augments what we do, mobile technologies, and so on. So I think that's really the reality of it. And as educators, we need to make sure that we're providing students, no matter what, again, the role they're going to be in. Even to be honest, if in agriculture, right? In agriculture, right now we have unmanned vehicles, right? That whether good or bad, right? We can agree or disagree on that. But that is going to be part of the technology going forwards, and using AI to measure pH and balance and et cetera, and soil, et cetera, and things like that, using adjacent technologies like the Internet of Things. So again, it's just preparing ourselves for what's next, as Joe said. And so as long as we're willing to do that, we're going to be able and to continue employment.
Well,
And
to
I would
both
say,
of your
just to
points.
add to that
Oh,
real
yeah, go
quick,
ahead, Joe.
Yeah.
being born and raised on a farm from there, like for me that hit the kind of a specific point for me from there, because I remember, like, even as a kid growing up, like walking beans, cutting down the weeds or whatever. And now as I go back home, I've seen different instances of drones spraying a field or two here, or seeing in the combines where they're GPS mapping of their harvest yields, and there's specific points in the field that they show produces the most amount of corn, and how that impacts the amount of fertilizer they want to apply in the following year from me. And I was like, none of this was around when I was a kid or working with my dad, out there. So it's amazing to me how, technology and AI and a lot of this data is impacting every industry, across the board from there. So that was a good call out. Like, I remember that. I was like, oh yeah, I remember, that's totally different from talking, than when I go back home. So
Yeah.
Well, and I
Yeah.
think
And
that leads really well into what we've talked about previously as we've discussed AI together, is that it touches in every industry. I never thought when I graduated that I would be working as heavily with tech, I think, as I do now. And even on a day-to-day basis, I have the ability to interact with generative AI. And so that as a writer, someone who works in communications, that I think comes into a lot of what I do. But to Joe's point, it also frees up a lot of my time to be more strategic about the way that I spend the time that I do at work. And so we've talked about a lot of different industries and how it's impacted by AI. And I'm sure we have some educators on this call who are working with students who say, I have no desire to go into data science or computer science, any type of technology like that. But obviously, we've talked about how it impacts so many different fields. So what would you say to those who are not interested in pursuing IT per se, but want to be successful in a world where artificial intelligence is such a big component of what we do? So Joe, I'll come to you first for your advice or your thoughts about that.
yeah, and I would say, we go through here, it's understanding some of the foundations. of it. I think we've talked about a variety of different aspects from there, and I think as I was talking about where I think the future of jobs are starting to go is there is going to be a lot of that augmentation from there. So understanding, what it is. For example, I work with a lot of our investigators from there. So we build a variety of different models to help identify potential, theft or people trying to take exams on other people's behalf. So as part of their investigation is they need to understand how is the model configured to flag it, a particular instance, which will then help them dictate what type of investigation strategies do they need to apply from it. So once they understood okay, what was the data input? What was the scope for this particular data? What was the thresholds they have? Do I expect X number of false positives, from that output from there? I think that's where it's understanding those foundations will be, critical from there. But at the end of the day, it's like you said, is getting your hands dirty. Maybe it's that, agricultural background from there. Like just roll your sleeves up, get in, starting play. Even if it's as simple as, like you said, working on some text copy from there, helping thinking about, email crafting from there. Or even playing with different types of images. I know I kind of challenged myself for a couple presentations I've had to do about AI and said, okay, well, I'm only going to use AI to create my presentation, whether it's through images from there. Sometimes, it does help me out, like I can get through there. Sometimes I'm like, wow, that took about twice as long if I just would have done it myself. But that's part of what I think is, the excitement about learning about these new technologies, about learning those different things is where you've maybe fallen down or failed or made mistakes. I think that's truly the biggest learning opportunities from there. And that's why I would always encourage people as they go through, particularly with technology, is play with it, in that safe manner, making sure you're using the data that's appropriate or public, and just learn and experiment how it could help out your day-to-day life from there. I think that's truly how you'll start to think how you can use AI, and eventually that will start to influence your professional life from there.
Well, and I think that advice is wonderful for the learners who are maybe talking about potential future careers, but then also for educators in the classroom, right? It really can impact. I've done a lot of reading about how teachers are automating grading, or automating, lesson planning and things like that. There's a lot of opportunities to leverage it in a safe space, learn more about it, and be able to apply it in a way that makes sense for them. So that's wonderful advice, Joe.
I would say
Thank
the
you.
last thing is I've even seen some educators where they required them to kind of use generative AI to help do it. Is like, okay, here's the prompt, or here's the question that you have. Show what kind of the LLM model produce, and then articulate where it was a good point or something that wasn't factually accurate. So and starting to incorporate into their day-to-day lessons.
Yeah. Gets us all thinking out of the box a little bit more, right? Which I think is good. Jeff, anything that you wanted to add? Any advice that you want to share for people who are outside of the IT space but still want to be able to use AI effectively?
Yeah, I really do think you have to avail yourself to some level of knowledge about AI. It's one of those things. I know sometimes, I think all of us want to just go run and hide on top of a mountain somewhere, right? And be a Luddite. But the fact is that, I started off my career as a journalist, right? And journalism has, been impacted by a variety of different advances with technology. But AI, and specifically generative AI, is another one. So I think to, be successful in your career, you need to understand, whether it's a journalist, an educator, whatever the role may be, is how AI may shape that industry or those specific job roles. So we can't turn a blind eye to it. We need to, even if you don't embrace it, you have to have an awareness of it.
Great advice. Thank you both so much for all of the counsel that you've shared and the wonderful background experience that you've been able to give us. I think it's very valuable to be able to see for educators how AI is impacting industry. So we really appreciate you taking the time to share that with us today. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to call out something really quickly. Our Microsoft and IT specialist teams are really eager to have you learn and explore the curriculum, practice tests, and certification exams that we've talked about today. So if you're interested, I'll go ahead and drop their emails. Let me just open up the chat so that you guys can reach out to them if you have questions or if you wanted to experiment with some of those certifications or curriculum. We definitely encourage you, as Jeff has mentioned, these are great foundational starting points for your students. If you are really a veteran with AI, or if you're new to it, it's a great way to get your feet wet. So we're really excited to be able to share those with everyone who's been here with us today. Jeff, Joe, thank you so much for, again, all that you've shared. We really are grateful for your expertise and your time. Anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to those emails that I just dropped into the chat. Otherwise, we'll be sending a follow-up email for this recording, and you're welcome to respond to us there as well so that you can get some additional information. So thank you so much, everyone. We hope you have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.